You know, when the Galactic Academy first announced they were accepting humans into the student body, most of us thought it was some kind of joke, a really elaborate, poorly thought out joke. I mean, these creatures barely made it off their own planet without blowing themselves up. What, 3 times? 4? The count gets fuzzy after the second nuclear incident. My name is Thorn and I am a Velkari, which means I have 4 eyes, excellent pattern recognition, and the common sense that apparently everyone else in administration seemed to lack that cycle. I had been studying xenobiology for 6 rotations at the Academy, which sits on the neutral station of Gorduth Prime, and I thought I had seen everything. Methane breathers, silicon-based life forms, even those weird crystalline entities from the 7th arm who communicate through light refraction. Let me tell you about Fractus. This guy, and I use that term loosely, was a Korthan from the warrior caste of Korth Prime. Now, Korthans are what happens when evolution decides that being terrifying is a survival strategy. Picture this. 7 feet of dense muscle wrapped in scales that could deflect most small arms' fire, 4 arms, each one capable of bending titanium rebar, and a jaw structure that suggested his ancestors ate rocks for breakfast. Possibly still did, knowing Fractus. He had been at the Academy for 2 full cycles and held an undefeated record in every single physical competition. Combat trials, strength tests, endurance runs, you name it, Fractus won it. The guy collected trophies like I collected academic citations. Except his were shinier and came with a lot more bragging rights. His ego had its own gravitational field at this point, I swear. Small objects would orbit his head during lecture. The thing about Fractus was not just that he was strong. Lots of species were strong. The problem was that he knew it, and he made absolutely certain everyone else knew it too. He would flex during exams. Who does that? He wore his combat medals to astrophysics class. He once challenged a food dispenser to single combat because it gave him the wrong protein supplement. So when the humans arrived, small, squishy, with their pathetic single pair of arms and their weird forward-facing eyes, Fractus saw them as the universe's way of giving him new punching bags. He made jokes, loud ones, during orientation. Called them softlings, meatbags, walking target practice. That was his first mistake. His second was noticing Kira Chen. Humans. They were about to teach us all a lesson we would never ever forget. Kira Chen sat in the 3rd row of our comparative species biology class, always in the same seat, always with the same focused expression that suggested she was actually paying attention to Professor Melthan's lectures, which, let me tell you, was impressive because Melthan could make a supernova sound boring. She was small, even by human standards, maybe 5.5 feet tall, thin build, with dark hair she kept tied back in what humans call a ponytail. Practical, no nonsense, the kind of student who took notes on an actual datapad instead of just recording lectures like the rest of us lazy folks. Her uniforms were always clean, pressed, regulation perfect. She never spoke unless called on, and when she did, her answers were precise, thoughtful, and usually correct. In other words, she was exactly the kind of student that someone like Fractus would see as weak. The thing was, and I only noticed this because I am trained to observe details, Kira moved differently than the other humans. There was an economy to her movements, nothing wasted, nothing excessive. When she walked, it was balanced, centered, like she was always aware of her body in space. Her hands, when she was not writing, rested calmly on her desk, but I noticed calluses across her knuckles, thick ones, the kind that do not come from academic pursuits. She also had this way of watching people, not staring, nothing aggressive, just this quiet observation that cataloged everything. I caught her doing it once, those dark eyes tracking Fractus as he strutted into class late, again, making noise, again disturbing everyone, again. Her expression never changed, not a frown, not a smile, nothing. She just watched, filed the information away somewhere behind those calm eyes, and went back to her notes. Yeah, I should have seen it coming. It started on a Tuesday. Well, what we call Tuesday on the station, which is actually the 3rd rotation cycle of the week, but humans insisted on using their Earth calendar and somehow it stuck. Professor Melthan was droning on about evolutionary adaptations in low-gravity environments when Fractus decided to share his thoughts with the entire class. This is pointless, he announced loud enough that even the Silthari in the back, who barely had ears, could hear him. Why are we studying weakling species? Half of these adaptations are just excuses for being prey animals. Professor Melthan, bless his 3 hearts, tried. He really did. Mr. Fractus, all species have evolved survival strategies appropriate to their environments. Strength is only one metric of success. Success? Vraktos laughed, and it sounded like rocks grinding together. Humans have been in space for what, 50 cycles? We have been conquering star systems for millennia. They are children playing with technology they barely understand. A few students shifted uncomfortably. The two other humans in class, Marcus and Jennifer, looked down at their desks. But Kira, she just kept taking notes, her stylus moving across her datapad in smooth, even strokes. Their homeworld has 0.98 standard gravity. Vraktos continued, warming to his subject now, gesturing with two of his forearms. Thin atmosphere. They evolved running after prey because they were too weak to catch it quickly. Pursuit predators. The professor calls it. I call it pathetic. Mr. Vraktos, that is enough. Malthan said, but his voice had that pleading quality that told everyone it was definitely not enough. And Vraktos knew it. Look at them, he said, pointing directly at Kira now. Sitting there, scribbling notes like good little herbivores. No natural armor, no claws, no venom, nothing. They bring weapons to fights because their bodies are useless. Soft skin that tears if you look at it wrong. The classroom had gone completely silent. Even Malthan had stopped pretending to regain control. Everyone was watching Kira now, waiting for a reaction, waiting for tears or anger or literally anything. She finished writing her sentence, put down her stylus, and looked up at Vraktos with those calm, dark eyes. Are you done? She asked, her voice quiet but somehow carrying across the entire room. Oh boy, I thought. Here we go. Vraktos's face, well, the part that passed for a face, split into what I assumed was a smile. It looked more like a landslide. Done. Little human. I have not even started. You sit there so quiet, so studious, pretending you belong here, but we all know the truth. Your species is only here because the council felt sorry for you. He stood up, all 7 feet of him, his scales catching the light, making him look even more massive in the confined classroom. Tell you what, Sopherling, let us make this educational. You and me, physical contest, the training arena. We can test these evolutionary advantages your professor loves so much. The room erupted. Students were already pulling out their communicators, spreading the news. A challenge. An actual formal challenge in the middle of class. This had not happened in cycles. Professor Malthan was making noises about regulations and proper channels and administrative approval, but nobody was listening. The Velkari twins in the front row were already calculating odds. I heard someone behind me whisper, 10 credits says she cries before it even starts. Kira stood up slowly, gathering her datapad, organizing her materials with the same methodical precision she did everything. The whole time Vraktos was talking, loud, making sure everyone heard. Maybe I will go easy on you. Would not want to break the fragile human on her first real challenge. Might make the council regret their charity decision. She looked at him, and for the first time I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, something else. Something patient. Training arena after classes end, she said simply. Standard sparring rules, no weapons, first to submit or incapacitation. Vraktos laughed. That grinding rock sound again. You hear that? She accepts. This is going to be over in seconds. The betting pool hit 50 credits before we even left the classroom. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was betting on the human. Well, almost nobody. I put 5 credits on Kira because I am an optimist. And frankly, the odds were fantastic. By the time classes ended, half the station knew about the challenge. The training arena, normally a quiet place where serious athletes worked on their conditioning, had transformed into something between a sporting event and a public execution. Students packed the observation galleries, 3 levels deep, all chattering in dozens of languages and frequency ranges. The arena itself was a circular space, 50 meters across, with a floor made of reinforced composite sidel designed to handle beings who could bench press small vehicles. The walls were lined with impact-absorbing panels because, well, sometimes competitors went flying. Environmental controls kept the atmosphere at standard mix, comfortable for most species, if a bit oxygen-rich for some. Vraktos arrived first, naturally, because being late would have ruined his entrance. He wore minimal sparring gear, just enough to satisfy regulations, which meant everyone got a good look at those scales and muscles. He started his warm-up routine immediately, and let me tell you, it was designed for maximum intimidation. He lifted weights that would have crushed most species. He punched the practice dummy so hard it flew across the room and dented the wall panel. He roared, this deep subsonic thing that made my secondary stomach clench, and flexed all four arms in a display that had probably evolved to scare off predators on his homeworld. It was working here too. I saw 3 students leave the gallery, deciding this was not entertainment they needed. The crowd was loving it. Chants of his name echoed through the space. Someone had even made signs. Signs. Who brings signs to an impromptu challenge match? Then Kira walked in, and the noise level dropped by half, mostly because people were trying not to laugh. She wore standard academy exercise clothing, simple, functional, nothing special. She set down a water bottle at the edge of the arena, did some stretches that looked frankly adorable compared to Vrtos's display of raw power. She rolled her shoulders, rotated her neck, touched her toes a few times. That was it. No intimidation display, no roaring, no throwing heavy objects around. She looked like someone preparing for a light jog, not a fight with a 7-foot combat-trained warrior who could probably tear through a bulkhead with his bare hands. Vrtos watched her warm up and laughed so hard I thought he might hurt himself. That would have saved us all a lot of time. The referee, a neutral Glorian who had probably seen 1,000 matches and was visibly bored with this one before it started, called them to center arena. He went through the standard rules. Contact allowed. No lethal force. Match ends on submission or incapacitation. Medical team on standby. All the usual legal protection stuff that the Academy required. Combatants ready? The Glorian asked in that flat, disinterested tone. Vrtos cracked his knuckles. All 4 sets of them, the sound echoing like gunshots. Ready to teach? Kira just nodded, her hands loose at her sides, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Begin. Vrtos exploded forward with a speed that should not have been possible for something his size. Basic physics suggest that much mass could not accelerate that quickly. But Korthan physiology apparently missed that lecture. He closed the distance in under a second. All 4 arms reaching to grab, crush, end this embarrassing mismatch immediately. The crowd was already cheering his victory. And then Kira was not there anymore. She moved, not away but to the side and down, dropping under his grab with a motion so smooth it looked practiced 1,000 times. Her hand, that small human hand with the calloused knuckles, snapped out and struck Vrtos in the side, right where his floating rib equivalent was located. The sound was sharp, precise, nothing like the wild brawling most people expected. Vrtos stumbled, more from surprise than pain I think, and spun to face her. His expression had changed to the arrogant smile replaced with something more focused. Lucky, he growled. He attacked again, more carefully this time using his reach advantage, keeping 2 arms back for defense while the other 2 struck out in a pattern designed to corner her, limit her movement, force her into a position where his superior strength would matter. Kira retreated, but not frantically, not panicked. She moved like water, flowing around his strikes. And every time she moved, she was slightly off angle from where Vrtos expected. His fist passed through empty air. His grab caught nothing, and each time he overextended, even slightly, her hand or foot would snap out, striking joints, hitting muscle clusters, targeting spots that made him wince. They were not hard hits, not the devastating strikes you would expect to end a fight, but they were adding up. I leaned forward in my seat, my 4 eyes trying to track the movement. This was not what anyone expected. The crowd had gone quieter, confused, watching this tiny human somehow not getting immediately destroyed. Next to me a Dranthian student muttered, "Why is she still standing? He should have ended this already." Yeah, I thought, staring at Kira's calm, focused expression as she avoided another grab. He really should have, so why has he not? 3 minutes in and Vrtos was breathing harder. Not exhausted, not even close, but harder than he should have been against an opponent he had promised to crush in seconds. His attacks were getting sloppier, wilder, driven by frustration rather than technique. Kira, on the other hand, looked exactly the same as when she started. Her breathing was controlled, steady, her movements precise. She was not trying to overpower him, that would have been suicide. Instead, she was doing something far more insidious. She was breaking him down, piece by piece, strike by calculated strike. She hit the same spots over and over. His left knee joint already taking extra stress from his aggressive footwork, the muscle cluster in his upper right arm that controlled his grip strength, the nerve bundle near his neck that controlled balance. Each strike was surgical, targeting weaknesses that most people would not even know existed. And the thing was, Vrtos was landing hits too. His fist caught her shoulder once, a glancing blow that still sent her spinning. I heard the impact from the gallery, a meaty thud that made me wince. That hit would have shattered bones in most species. She rolled with it, came up, kept moving. Another strike caught her ribs, and I saw her face tighten, saw actual pain flash across her features. But she did not stop. She did not slow down. She did not quit. "Stay still," Fractos roared. And there was something new in his voice now. Not confidence, desperation. "Fight me properly." Kira said nothing. She just kept moving, kept striking, kept wearing him down with the patience of a species that evolved chasing prey across endless plains until it collapsed from exhaustion. "Oh," I thought, as understanding hit me like a physical blow.
"Oh no."
That is what she is doing. The crowd was starting to realize it too. The cheering had stopped. The jokes had died. People were watching in silence as this impossible thing unfolded in front of them. Fractos, the undefeated champion, was slowing down. His attacks were coming less frequently, his blocks arriving a fraction of a second too late. That knee she had been targeting was affecting his stance. That arm was not gripping as tightly. Meanwhile, Kira just kept going. Her strikes never lost precision. Her movement never became sloppy. Yes, she was hurt. I could see bruises forming on her pale skin, could see the careful way she was protecting her ribs, but she was not stopping. Humans, I remembered from Professor Malthan's lectures, could regulate their body temperature through sweating, allowing them to move in conditions that would overheat most species. Their efficient bipedal locomotion meant they could maintain activity for hours, days even, when necessary. They had evolved as persistence hunters, creatures that did not need to be faster or stronger than their prey. They just needed to be more stubborn. Fractos launched another attack, this one slow enough that I could actually track it, and Kira stepped inside his guard. Her elbow drove up into his jaw with a crack that echoed through the arena. His head snapped back, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of injury. Fear of something worse. Fear that he might actually lose. The gallery was dead silent now. Nobody was laughing. Nobody was betting. They were all watching history being made, one calculated strike at a time. Fractos knew it was slipping away. I could see it in the way he held himself, the way his confident stance had deteriorated into something defensive, protective, and that, more than anything else, is what pushed him over the edge. He roared, that subsonic battle cry again, and threw everything into one final assault. All four arms, all his strength, all his rage and humiliation channeled into an overwhelming blitz designed to end this nightmare. He was not thinking anymore, not strategizing. He was trying to crush this small, stubborn human through sheer overwhelming force. It was exactly what Kira had been waiting for. She took a hit, a solid one, his fist catching her upper arm and sending her staggering, but that stagger was controlled, moving her exactly where she wanted to be. As Fractos's momentum carried him forward, overextended, off balance from putting everything into that strike, she planted her back foot. What happened next took maybe 2 seconds, but I will remember it for the rest of my life. Kira pivoted using Fractos's own forward motion against him, her hand grabbing his extended arm, not to stop it but to guide it. She dropped her weight, pulled him further off balance, and as his massive body tipped forward, she drove her knee up into his midsection with every ounce of force her human legs could generate. The air left his lungs in an explosive gasp that echoed through the silent arena. But she was not done. As he folded forward from the impact, she spun, her other leg sweeping around in a motion that was part dance, part destruction. Her heel caught him in the side of the head with a crack that made my teeth hurt. Fractos went down, not gracefully, not in a controlled fall, but like a building collapsing. All 7 feet and 400 pounds of him hit the reinforced arena floor, and the floor cracked. Actually cracked. The composite material designed to handle combat between species that could bend steel fractured under the impact, spider web lines radiating out from where Fractos's body hit. He did not get up. Kira stood over him, breathing hard now, finally showing the exertion. Her hand pressed against her ribs where she had taken those hits. Blood ran from a cut above her eye mixing with sweat. She looked down at Fractos, who was conscious but not moving, his eyes staring at nothing, his chest heaving as he tried to remember how breathing worked. The referee rushed forward, checked Fractos, and raised his hand to signal the end of the match. Winner by incapacitation, Kira Chen. The silence in the arena stretched for another heartbeat. 2, 3. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined, and suddenly the entire gallery erupted in noise. Not cheering for Fractos, not anymore. They were cheering for the small human who had just done the impossible. Kira did not acknowledge them. She just walked calmly to where she had left her water bottle, picked it up, took a long drink, and waited for the medical team to finish with Raktos before she let them examine her injuries. Professional to the end. The medical team swarmed Raktos like scavengers on a carcass which, given his current state, felt oddly appropriate. They scanned him with their instruments, their expressions growing more confused with each reading. 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising across major muscle groups, concussion, strained ligaments in both knees, and his jaw is fractured, the lead medic announced, his voice carrying that professional bewilderment of someone whose reality just got rewritten. How did a human do this to a Korthon? Professor Malthan had made his way down to the arena floor, and I followed because, well, I needed answers. My entire understanding of human limitations had just been demolished as thoroughly as Vraktos's pride. May I? Malthan asked Kira, who nodded while an assistant medic applied synthetic skin to the cut above her eye. The professor activated his hollow display, pulling up a human anatomical chart. What we failed to consider, he began, his voice taking on that lecture hall quality, is that humans are not strong by our standards, true, but they are efficient. Their skeletal structure, their muscle attachment points, everything is designed for endurance and repeated motion. They can perform the same action, again and again for hours without significant performance degradation. He zoomed in on the human leg structure. Their legs contain the largest muscles in their body, designed for bipedal locomotion across vast distances. A human can run for days. Most predators on their homeworld could sprint faster, but the humans just kept coming, kept following, kept pursuing until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. But the strikes, someone in the crowd called out, those were not just endurance, those were precise. Malthan nodded, switching the display to show a human brain. Tool users. Problem solvers. They do not rely on natural weapons, so they developed strategic thinking, pattern recognition, the ability to identify weakness and exploit it. Miss Chen was not fighting with strength, she was fighting with thousands of years of evolutionary adaptation that taught her species how to bring down creatures much larger than themselves. I watched them load Raktos onto a medical stretcher, still staring at the ceiling, still processing his defeat, and I thought about something I had read once, back in my first cycle studying Earth predators. The most terrifying thing about humans was not that they could chase you. Lots of predators could chase. It was that they would chase you. They would follow your tracks across continents, across seasons, across years if necessary. They did not need to be faster. They did not need to be stronger. They just needed to be more patient, more stubborn, more willing to keep going when every other species would have given up. And now they were in the stars, bringing that same relentless persistence with them. We really should have paid more attention during orientation. The story spread through Gordoth Prime Station like a virus, mutating and growing with each retelling. By the next morning, everyone knew. The humans in the cafeteria were no longer eating alone. Students who had dismissed them as charity cases were now asking questions, genuine ones, about Earth and its history and how their species had survived long enough to reach the stars. Raktos returned to class a week later, his ribs healed, but his pride still in intensive care. He sat in the back now, quiet, no more lectures about superior species or evolutionary failures. The few times I saw him look at Kira, there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Respect maybe, or possibly just healthy fear. Hard to tell with Korthanes. The challenge match became legendary. Students who were not even there claimed they had witnessed it. The cracked floor in the training arena became a tourist attraction before maintenance finally replaced it. Someone started a data file cataloging the fight, breaking down every strike, every movement, analyzing it like ancient generals studied historical battles. As for Kira, she handled her newfound fame the same way she handled everything else, quietly, efficiently, without fuss. She still sat in the third row of comparative species biology, still took meticulous notes, still answered questions with that same precise, thoughtful manner. I caught her after class one day, my curiosity finally overcoming my common sense. Why did you accept the challenge? You could have reported him, filed a complaint, let the administration handle it. She looked at me with those calm, dark eyes, and I saw that same patient evaluation I had noticed before. Because he needed to learn, she said simply. And sometimes the best teacher is experience. Were you ever worried you might lose? She smiled then, just a slight curve of her lips. I have been training in martial arts since I was 6 years old. 12 years of learning how to fight people bigger and stronger than me. Raktos was tough. I will give him that. but he relied on intimidation and natural advantages. He had never fought someone who refused to be intimidated. She paused, adjusting the strap on her bag. Besides, my species did not get to the stars by giving up when things looked impossible. We got here by being too stubborn to quit. Yeah, that tracked. As I watched her walk away, joining Marcus and Jennifer, who were waiting by the corridor entrance, I thought about all the assumptions we had made, about weakness and strength, about what made a species worthy of respect, about the dangerous habit of judging capabilities by appearance. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest, or the most heavily armored, or the longest lived, but they had something that maybe mattered more than any of those advantages. They had the ability to look at impossible odds, at challenges that should have broken them, at opponents who outmatched them in every measurable way, and say not today, and then just keep going until they won. The galaxy was still figuring out what to do with that, but one thing was certain: nobody was underestimating the humans anymore. Not after Kira Chen broke a Korthan warrior in the arena floor in the same afternoon. Welcome to the Galactic Academy, humanity. Class is in session and apparently you are teaching it.